everyone, I'm Rincey and this is Rincey Reads. Today I'm going to be doing a review on American Born Chinese by Luen Yang. This is a young adult graphic novel. If there are age categorizations for graphic novels, I'm not completely sure. The first one follows Jin Wang, who is a Chinese American student and is the only Chinese American student in his class. The second one follows Danny, who is basically like an all-American kid, but then his obnoxious Chinese cousin comes to visit. And then the third story follows the fable or mythological story behind the Monkey King. When you start out reading the graphic novel, all three of these stories feel very disconnected from each other, but then eventually they come together in a way that I at least wasn't expecting. As you can tell, this graphic novel is a Prince Award winner, and on the back it lists a lot of other awards or nominations or lists that it was put on for being a really great graphic novel. And also Yang received a lot of attention last year for his graphic novel series Boxers and Saints. This graphic novel, first of all, is very well done. The entire thing is full color stories and all of the characters are really well illustrated. I especially like the illustrations for the Monkey King set. In terms of the actual storyline, I like this story, but I didn't love it. Like I said in the beginning, you don't really know how these three stories are fitting together, so you kind of jump back and forth between the three different stories and they feel very disconnected, so I felt like I was having a hard time really getting into this graphic novel. It took me 2 days to read this, even though it's relatively thin, and again, it's a graphic novel and the panels aren't like super huge on every page or anything like that, so it shouldn't have taken me 2 days to read it, but I read the first half and I wasn't really feeling it, so I decided to put it down, and then I picked it up the next day and then I finally finished it. So I think that has something to say with the way that this story is structured, but I will say that the second half of the story, when you can see all of the pieces coming together, it became more enjoyable. But at the same time, I wasn't crazy about the way this story ended. Not necessarily in terms of the actual content, but the fact that it feels like the story wraps up very quickly. Everything basically makes sense, but I felt like the second half went by so fast, and then I was just like, oh, it's done now. And not in the sense that I wanted more of it, but in the way that it felt like the first half spent a lot of time developing characters and then the second half just sort of sped through the plot and then it was over, and I wasn't really crazy about that. That being said, I still think this was a really good graphic novel. Yang covers a lot of topics that I think anyone who is an Asian American can relate to. The idea of being an other is something that he touches on a lot, and just being an outsider and having differences and things like that. So even if you aren't Asian American but you have ever felt like any sort of outsider, this story will probably appeal to you. Also, in one of the storylines, Yang utilizes a sort of Chinese stereotype, and he utilizes it with a purpose, so it's not like he's, just being racist. There's a point behind it, but I have to say that just using that stereotype really grated me and made it difficult for me to read those panels. Those panels I particularly skimmed through very quickly, not wanting to dwell on those pages too long. Again, that probably has a little bit to do with my experience with this story. I can understand why a lot of people really love this story. It's really original, it's really unique, and the themes and the topics that he talks about are really important, but it didn't quite hit home for me the way that I wanted it to. I don't know if my expectations were too high because I know a lot of people love this, and because, it's a Prince Award winner and lots of people that I am friends with on Goodreads rank it very high and things like that. So I don't know if my expectations were too high, but I didn't love this story quite as much as I wanted to. In the end, I gave this book a 3 out of 5 stars, and I am still really excited to read Boxers and Saints, but I feel like my expectations have been lowered quite a bit. I definitely don't regret reading the story whatsoever, and again, I feel like this is an important story to read, especially to understand the experience of being either an immigrant in America or just the otherness that I think everyone feels at some point in their life. So yeah, that's my review of American Born Chinese. If you have read this graphic novel, feel free to leave your comments down below letting me know what you thought of it, or if you have any questions about this graphic novel, feel free to leave that down there as well. Or if you've read Boxers and Saints, let me know what you thought of that, or how it compares if you've read both Boxers and Saints and American Born Chinese. So yeah, that's all I have for now. Thanks for watching.